Now, given this problem of special pleading, theists had a great idea. They thought, instead of saying that everything that exists has a cause, how about we just say that everything that begins to exist has a cause? Then they've got the second premise, the universe began to exist, and their conclusion, therefore the universe has a cause. Where to start? Okay, proponents tend to defend the first premise by arguing for the impossibility of actual infinites. For instance, the Islamic scholar Al-Ghazali emphasized that if the universe had existed forever, then despite Saturn taking 30 times longer than the Earth to orbit the Sun, both have completed the same number of orbits, infinite. And in recent years, William Lane Craig has expressed these same absurdities through the prism of Hilbert's Hotel. It's the same argument, just more abstract. All right, let's get to objections, because I am well and truly running out of time. Al-Ghazali's rotations and Hilbert's Hotel are simply vertical paradoxes. They produce results that seem absurd, but nevertheless are true. It's like the Monty Hall problem. They work against our intuitions. Any set with Cantor's property is going to yield unintuitive results. And once you wrap your head around set theory, these absurdities are simply not a problem. Infinite sets have weird properties. Get over it, like the overwhelming majority of mathematicians and philosophers have. Now, another prominent defense of this premise in recent years has come from Alex Proust, Robert Koons, and Josh Rasmussen. And what they are saying is that causal finitism is true. Causal finitism is the thesis that nothing can have an infinite causal history. Or in other words, there cannot be infinitely many causes affecting one target state, substance, or event. And to illustrate this, a priori, no less, from an armchair, theists will employ supposed paradoxes such as the Grim Messenger paradox. We haven't the time to be able to get into any of these paradoxes. I'm running out of time completely. But because the Grim Messenger paradox is their choice weapon, it's the one that they put forward, we can just simply point out that it is not, in fact, a paradox, but rather a logical inconsistency. It's just difficult to recognize it. If you need more help on this, watch my debate with Cameron Bertuzzi. I spell it out, and I go deeply into the works of Nicholas Schickel. So you check that out. Next up.
Okay, what do you think here, Jono? Getting in this infinity fun.
So I have a nice thing to say and a bit of a mean thing to say. Which should I start with?
Start with the criticism, and then we can get into the nice thing.
Criticism. So my criticism would be his history that he gave at the start, where theists had a great idea. So this Thomist argument has been debunked. Let's invent the Kalam. That's not the history. So if you read Thomas, not that I'm some kind of Thomas expert, but he was aware of the Kalam arguments and he rejected them. So some of the people alive at his time, so Saint Bonaventure, a Catholic priest, and also a number of Muslim philosophers gave the Kalam argument. Thomas knew about it. He disagreed with it and he stuck with his own arguments. So his history that like these silly Christians, they got debunked. They had to just be cheeky and invent a new argument. Like that's just not the right history. Yeah. And now for my nice thing. So his part about Hilbert's Hotel, that was excellent. I loved it. He was right. So I have an introduction to the philosophy of mathematics. This, of course, I'm taking next semester, but I'm a bit of a nerd, so I decided to just teach myself the content over the holidays. And part of a quote about Hilbert's Hotel, I'll read it. It says, "This is strange but not paradoxical. It's just one of the peculiarities of infinite sets, peculiarities that run counter to our usual experience and intuitions formed by a consideration of finite cases." So he said, like the overwhelming majority of mathematicians and philosophers, you should just get over it, was his language. And he's right. The inference from Hilbert's Hotel or these kind of absurdities about actual infinites is not really an idea that contemporary philosophers of mathematics are like taking too seriously, that has big some kind of big inference to whether or not the past could be finite. So I like that. And some unsolicited advice that I shouldn't be giving out, but I'm going to do it anyway. If you want to defend the Kalam argument, that's cool. I love the Kalam. It's super interesting. Keeps me up at night thinking about it. But the Hilbert's Hotel, like, look how crazy the actual infinite is. The kind of Craigian view. It's not the way to go. I think stick with the Grim Reapers. That's my unsolicited advice. I don't know if you'd agree with that.
Yeah, I've been honestly, so with like the actual idea of the actual infinites, I've been leaning probably towards agreeing with you. I'm not really sure like where my mind leans, because I do think like one, just pointing out like actual infinites are like really weird is like true. But I don't know if that's sufficient to like establish that as like showing that like you can have like an actually infinite like past. So I do think like the Grim Reapers and like showing looking at like causal finitism, that's probably a better route forward when looking at this. And there's also the worries of like if you say actual infinites are possible, like Alex Malpass has talked about like the problem of like, well, could we actually like have like an infinite heaven if actual infinites are impossible? And it's like, I don't know. It's definitely a worry. So I don't like bother defending Hilbert's Hotel. I'm not saying it doesn't work. I don't know. It's not my go-to. So
yeah, but not to completely shut people down. If you think that you can have a good Hilbert-Total argument. That's awesome. People would be interested in seeing it, but just recognize that this is an uphill battle. If in undergraduate philosophy of mathematics textbooks, it's saying that you're wrong. Not that you shouldn't try and argue against it, but you should just at least be aware that the kind of Craig position is a extreme minority. And I was about to say something else. I liked what you said about Alex Malpass. There's also the idea of God's knowledge being a possible counterexample. So God knows that 1 + 1. He knows what 1 + 2 is. He knows what 1 + 3 is. And he could do that for all the natural numbers. So how many natural numbers are there? Infinite. So God knows an actually infinite amount of propositions. That's one possible way to say that theism and the actual infinite fit well together.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. I would say I probably followed the line of Graham Oppie here. So if you look at his debate review they did on, I think it was the Andrew Loke debate, and it was on, I think it was on Alex's channel with him and Joe and Oppie, and they asked Oppie in the beginning why Oppie would lean towards accepting causal finitism. He just said it's a simpler view, and to me that's probably the best reason for me why I'm certain if I was going to make an argument for causal finitism, I would say it's the simplest view when we're looking at it from the armchair. So I just think about this idea of so this is infinite causal history, and this is subjective. To me it just seems that seems a lot more complex to say there's always just been a cause before the cause, just infinitely, to just saying well there's just something necessary that's the first cause. And to me that just seems a simpler view of things, and that's why I kind of just the comparing theories based thing.
So the kind of grim reapers or the paper passes to causal finitism, I'm agnostic on. I think, like you said in the notes somewhere, that you're agnostic on the paradoxes, but I tend to agree with Oppie. I think I hold to his initial uncaused natural world state, or whatever he calls it. It might be that the causal finitism can be shown through the paradoxes. Maybe I'd have to study more about that. But yeah, I think I agree that the finitism is simpler.
Yeah. And I think comparing our necessary items, if we're gonna have some sort of foundation, if you're gonna say it's just the whole space-time cosmos, all the 10 to the 80th particles and whatnot, and it's just all of it, and it's just infinitely existed in some sort of infinite past causal chain, that seems a lot more complex than in my mind than saying God, or even a necessary initial state. It just seems a much more complex view than needed to explain all the data. So yeah.